major life-giving principle has been removed. The decay of a dead body is an evidence of life, but it is a gradual release of living things from a pattern, and because they are released from the pattern, they gradually become destroyed by lack of the central nutritional power which holds things together. So the moon has its own sub-life, but it does not possess a major evolving life such as we know. While we are discovering its craters and its well-puffed surface, actually we have learned nothing from this recent exploration of the subject that was not philosophically known thousands of years ago. And except for a few completely fictional approaches, no one of serious mind and philosophy has had any idea, other than that of the ancient Hindus, that the moon was gradually disintegrating. It was like a ghost in a graveyard. It was perhaps a little more tangible or physical than the common ghost that we see, but still it is only a shadow. It is only a remainder, which can never again be reinsouled any more than the mummified body of an Egyptian pharaoh. The energies of the moon, however, are very interesting, because man in his own psychic integration also has a lunar antibody in his own magnetic field. The moon plays a part in the life of things. It isn't a total loss by any means. The moon radiates certain kinds of energy. The energy of the sun striking the moon and reflected to the earth mingles in psychic chemistry with the direct ray of the sun, forming a peculiar chemical situation on the earth itself. Also, the etheric double of the moon, which is only a phase of its physical body, and like the spook, is also an empty shell. The etheric double of the moon is very important in connection with physical generation. It provides certain elements necessary for the creation of bodies. These elements being particularly the etheric field, which holds particles of matter together and also provides the link binding consciousness to form. The moon plays an important relation part in these things. The moon also, because of its tremendous influence upon tidal motions and upon the fluids of things, is the most dominant factor in the etheric body of the earth. It is this, the lunar motions, working through the etheric field that disturbs substances in the magnetic field of man, producing certain phenomena which is intensified at eclipses and at new moons. Also producing a kind of phenomena that by disturbing the etheric fluid balance of the human body is associated with outbreaks of mental disease. It is deeply involved in the problem of contagion and infection, which are themselves due to the debilities of the etheric double. And of course we know that the moon is involved in the menstruational cycle. These all have to do with the effect upon the etheric double of man, which is the problem involved, because the moon determines the day and night of ether, of the etheric double, as the sun determines the day and night of the physical body. Therefore, it is the moon that determines the cycles of fertility and sterility in the life of all creatures on the earth. The moon also has to do with the psychic field of man in its effect upon imagination. And the imaginative faculties of the mind are to a degree due to the influence of the moon upon the etheric fluids that support both the brain and the mind. Therefore, actually, the effect of the moon is that of push and pull, a gravitational effect creating an imbalance in the magnetic field. Each planet has moons. Some have more than one. In some, however, the moons have disintegrated until only their etheric doubles still exist. When a moon is completely removed, or when a planet loses the last of its moons, and there is no further disturbance of this kind, it means that almost certainly that that particular planet has outgrown its etheric inconstancy. Where the moons disappear, the duration of the physical life upon a planet is greater. When the moons disappear, most of the tensions and psychic pressures of a planet are reduced. And if we are to assume that somewhere there is a place where things are immortal, it must be where the power of the moon has been done away with, because the moon is associated closely with mortality. There's one other point we'd like to mention, and that is the rings of Saturn. These were known at a very early time in human experience. The rings of Saturn represent a link between the solar system and that which lies outside of the globe or area set aside for the manifestation of the solar logos. The planet Saturn is a chemically psychic thing which suggests almost nirvana. For the rings are really, according to the ancients, were the bands of ever more subtle vibrations through which entities or beings pass when they escape from the solar system. Therefore, the rings absorb all of the forms of life in the orbits of the other planets, and that which is useless is cast into chaos by the rings of Saturn, and that which has the great spiritual power, or that which has the great evolutionary trend perfected within it, is released through the rings of Saturn into a developed consciousness beyond that which we know here. Therefore, the rings of Saturn bring the solar system into objectivity and reabsorb it again into subjectivity. When Saturn eats all his children, the elements of the solar system, the assimilation and excretion of this procedure is through the rings. And most ancient peoples were very much aware that the rings represented the final breakdown of all things that have to do with mortality, and that the final vestiges of matter are broken up and scattered in space through the rings of Saturn. These rings also form the link between this solar system and the next superior order of life. So with thousands of years of thought and study and a vast amount of interpretation of these matters, the ancients came to some interesting thoughts on this subject, thoughts that can also be adapted to other areas of interest. And while we might not really feel that their position was entirely sound astronomically, let us realize that this wasn't their problem. Their primary problem was the psychology of the universe. Their primary problem was the relationship between creation and mental phenomena, and most of all, the relationship as experienced in the consciousness of man between the human being and the vast evolving patterns of space. Thus, while geocentric astronomy is no longer regarded as accurate astronomically and physically, there is much to indicate that geocentric astronomy is very accurate psychologically, because it deals primarily with levels of qualities, with processes taking place in the invisible psychic structure of things, and not merely the physical processes with which we are acquainted. The physical processes of generation and corruption of life which we see is only one aspect, for while this is taking place, while man seems to be going down to the grave, man and the universe are moving upward toward another destiny. And in one level, the energies seem to be classified in a physical pattern, but in the great level of things, the psychological pattern seems to be archetypally similar to the old, arbitrary, psychically revealed structure of the universe. And it is in this older structure that we must seek man's original insight and try to understand how his psychic nature is best represented by one pattern, even though this pattern is inconsistent with known physical scientific formulas. If we can combine these different elements, I think we will gain something of interest. Well, I guess time is up, so we'll see you next week, continue with this arbitrary rambling.